The best podcasts feel like a dance, a perfect back and forth where each voice shines. So, how do you find someone who allows you to get the spotlight? I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story. It's the difference between two women I dated right after each other, pretty much. One woman.
Pause.
Okay.
Pause. I'm
What?
sorry, say what now?
Two women I dated. It's a difference. Two women that I dated. So one woman.
Sorry, I interrupted. I'm sorry.
That's all good. It's all good. It's all good. You gonna get the point once I lay the point out there. So I would go out with one girl and we go out to the club. And when I say we party. Like when we danced together, it really was like a sway. Like we really got each other's rhythm. It's like we were moving right in like unison and sync with each other. But then the other girl, she was fun to dance with, but she kind of danced off a little bit on her own. And then I kind of danced off a little bit on my own too. So it's like we was dancing in the same vicinity as each other, but we wasn't really dancing together. And I use that to illustrate the fact that when you are trying to find somebody that you are building a podcast with, co-hosts, they have to be people. They don't have to do exactly the same thing that you do, but the rhythm, that rhythm has to be lockstep for the most part. Like it's not a thing where it's like, they're not going to bring exactly what you bring to the table, but they know the rhythm. They know the pace. They know the tone. They know that it's on the 2 and the 4, not the 1 and the 3. And with that, that's Marion.
And that's Joe.
And I am a podcast pro.
Listen, this man said pro. You know what? Pro. Purposeful. Because, your conversation in your episode will be a perfect masterpiece if there's a purposeful sharing of that spotlight. Listen, R is resilience. The best co-hosts, they don't fight for the mic. They embrace resilience to build something better. What? Together. Oh, it's outstanding. Outstanding episodes come from co-hosts who shine individually, but even brighter together. That togetherness, it seems like there's a theme there. That togetherness is very much needed. Even in your story, that togetherness, obvious. Your first example, there was a togetherness. It was synchronized.
Synchronicity. Yeah.
There it is. Synchronicity. In the both of you desire to do the same thing at the same time. Listen together. But in the other instance, that other example you showed, it's amazing how same thing, music playing, two people, boy and a girl they're actually to be together, but somehow finding themselves dancing separately in their own spotlight. Go ahead, take it away, Joe.
Yes, indeed. So y'all came here after seeing part 1. Ain't no stopping us now. You know what I'm saying? Now we on part 2. And so last week we showed you how to identify that co-host that really magnifies your flow or matches your flow. This week, we've been talking about spotlight. And when you're in the spotlight, what do you do best? You shine.
Yeah.
So you got to find somebody that matches your shine. And in finding somebody that matches your shine, I mean, the first question you have to ask yourself is, does that co-host, do they balance listening and speaking effectively? Because there's a lot of people that love to talk. They love to hear the sound of their own voice. I call it, I would call it something, but I'm like, I don't want to necessarily use that word. But I think people can pick up what I'm putting down. But it's just a lot of, self-pleasuring from the sound of their own voice. We're going to put it like that. You don't want that. You want somebody that when you feel like y'all are talking or you're talking, that person is listening. They're hanging on to your every word. When they're talking, you're doing the same thing with them, because in that whole scenario, it's a matter of like you're trying to pick out pieces from what they're saying to keep the conversation going, whether it's with the co-host or whether it's with the guest that you bring on your show. So, man, I mean, for you, how do you balance that out? Like, especially, I mean, let's use us as an example. Like, navigating being a co-host with me, like, how do you feel like you've had to kind of sort of balance that whole dance between listening and speaking?
I think the greatest way I can have impact speaking is through my listening. Because if you're intentional, since I'm intentional about hearing what you have to say, it's much easier for me to determine, do I have a response or do I have a question to pull more out of you and what you just offered up? So listening to you makes this a much more comfortable and easy together dance. It makes it an amazing collaboration for me. Number one, I value what you have to say. So in valuing what you have to say, when I listen to you, like you can see it on my face. Even when you begin, great example. When you began that story, I was quite perplexed.
To say the
Because
least.
I'm sitting here going, pause. There's some backstory that I understand and that you mention quite frequently. You have a wife. Why are we talking about these two women? But then the story and the way that you phrase it is it fit the topic perfectly. So in that listening, I leave my mind open and curious to hear what it is you have to say so I can build upon what we're talking about. It's nothing like having someone not listening to you, not hearing you, not acknowledging what you're saying and going off in a totally different direction. That's the problem and the issue with not doing that first thing of actually attentively, intentionally, intensely listening to someone. And guess what? If it get past you because this thing right here, she, me, her, I think a lot. So I have to be intentional with shutting it down. But if it gets by me, I know how to rephrase and say, wait, say that again. And this, you can tell that the say that again is, I didn't get that. It's a difference between that say that again and my say that again that's real excited because I'm like, yo, what you just said is gold. We struck gold and I need you to say it again so even the person way in the back can hear what you just said. So it is you have to, that first part, listen with intentionality, respond with interest and compassion. Depends on what the response needs to be. And you just asked me to add to what was said. So I just built on what you said. I feel like in each episode, we build on. It doesn't mean I can't then interject another scenario, but just the one you gave. And I'm thinking, dude, your wife gonna watch this. Don't have her looking at me like that. What are you doing right now? What
Trust
everything
me,
in
I was
me
thinking the same thing.
went street. Everything in on everything I love, I'm on her side.
Like,
That's
wait.
so long as you know I'm a girl to the end. On
Oh, I know.
everything I love. See, I'm sorry. See, that's how. So even in that, I had to bring it into the conversation a
Yeah.
way that's palatable
Mm-hmm.
and acceptable and understood that even though I'm kikiing, I'm serious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Even though there's some kiki to it, there's
Yeah.
a little humor. I softened it. There's a way. That's that talk, that back and forth, that chemistry, that dance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
your story that we're talking about, and we share stories, and then we end up we share the story with each other, or our point of view, or our scenario, or our example with each other, and then we share it together. It's
That's
like
right.
you set the stage for both of us to be able to perform on the information that was just provided.
Yeah.
That can only be done with listening, because if while you're speaking, if all I'm doing is sitting here thinking about my next thing, it's not
Mm.
in sync. If
Mm.
all I'm worried about is upstaging you with what I got, oh, but I
Right.
got this and I got that. There are plenty of episodes that I came to the table with things to say,
Mm-hmm.
but in the moment, because I was present and
Yeah.
intentional with listening, I just let it organically be what that moment needed to be
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's
without
interesting about
feeling
what go
any
ahead. Go ahead.
kind of
I'm sorry.
without
Yeah.
feeling any kind of way. You said, what's
Yeah.
interesting?
So what's interesting is that that's literally what I'm doing right now. Because yes, there was a lot that I could say in this particular part, but because I asked this specifically because you've probably had like less experiences working, like you laid out an experience last episode of having to work with somebody and how that experience wasn't necessarily the best experience, and how now stepping into this new experience, you feel like there is that dance, there is that balance. But the reason why I asked the question of you specifically like I did was because I wanted to kind of sort of pull that out. I wanted people to kind of sort of see the importance of why you do that vetting process and why it's important. Because I mean, again, like we've said it a couple of times, Marion and I have known each other for a very long time. So this is, we're not new to this, we true to this, you know what I mean? So, but at the same time, again, like we said last week, everybody that you have great conversations with, you aren't meant to have podcasts with. And what you said was important because you did that before we even did a podcast together. That ability to listen, that ability to pull out and listen long enough to pull out particular gems from what somebody says in order to really add to the conversation, to really bolster it, to make it more interesting, and have people that are watching hang on to every word that's being said. Because it's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought to ask that question as a follow-up. But that's what comes with listening. That's what comes. It's the whole thing that God gave you one mouth, two ears. So you need to listen twice as much as you talk. And you are definitely, and for me, vetting somebody that I would do this particular venture with, that's why you are the perfect person to do this with, because you have that ability to, yes, when you speak, people listen. I know I listen for sure.
Wow. E.F. Hutton.
That's right. That's right. That's right. But that was important for me. If I was going to do this with anybody, like that was a requirement. Like I couldn't do it with somebody that I felt like they're gonna want to do all of the talking, and then I can't get a word in edgewise. Like for me, it's got to be a balance. And when I'm doing this podcast with you, you are one of the few people that I've been on a podcast with. There's a couple people that I've done podcasts with, And in later examples, I'll kind of sort of shout them out. But I think that's the beauty of, or I know that's the beauty of what makes us work, is that we knew that about each other coming into this podcast. We vetted each other without telling each other, hey, I'm vetting you. And, you know, it just made this whole dance that we do together on this podcast work. So for everybody watching, we are the prime example of what we're talking about.
Yes. Even in you saying you vetted me, there are things that people can do. Literally watch someone interview group conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Watch and pay attention. Really listen. By watch, I really mean listen. Just watch their response to other people to see if they actually, if someone's speaking, if they ask clarifying questions.
Mm-hmm.
If they really seek to understand what the person is saying, no matter what their temperament, are they honestly seeking to understand what the person is saying, how they feel, why they feel that way before they interject themselves into the situation? And this is something I've had to work on. This second one in this actionable step with the listening, I literally had to go, hold on, stop giving advice unless somebody asks you. And if they're not asking and you feel like I really need to say this, then you need to ask them, listen, do you want me just to listen? Or did you want me to say something? Because I want to show up the way that you need me to show up. That right there, you hear people say things like that, asking clarifying questions, really actually digging into somebody going, listen, I got something I really want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and y'all all sitting there as friends. They shouldn't just be, yeah, man, you should have been walked away. You should have, you should have that, shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Those shoulda, coulda, wouldas play into nothing as to how that person feels. So again, he was talking about just the coupling of people. So in that, I'm just saying, in the coupling of your whoever you decide to partner with, you want sure that they can do those things, because when you have guests, or even when you're sharing something that might be a sensitive subject for you, you want to make sure you're with someone that cares and has compassion and empathy and can read your cues.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing worse than people who don't have emotional intelligence and somebody who is socially tone deaf. If I should, I won't say should, but could use that, because there's nothing worse than people who can't read the room. That can't read the room, that have to be the person to say what it is that they just got to get off their chest or they got to say. And the moment didn't call for that. Like, I was in a situation, I'm not going to name no names or anything like that, but I never forget, I'm talking to this guest, and it's one of my friends that like was on one of the old shows that I was on. And the guest is talking, and I don't even know how we veered off on this particular topic or whatever. I think it just kind of sort of got mentioned, and he wasn't even really a legit co-host. He just happened to like always come to the show. But in that moment that he proffered something that nobody asked him to proffer, and it was offensive. And at that moment, I was like, yeah, you can't come back, bro. I didn't say it, but my energy gave it off. Like, yeah, nah, you can't come back. And I can't see myself doing like a show with you now because of this. Like, if I thought about bringing you on as a co-host, because I didn't have a co-host at this particular point of the show, but it was like one of those moments, like, because he took that moment to overshadow the person that was there, telling their story, talking about the things that they've gone through in the acting business and all of these different things. And then this person takes this moment to basically go on a crusade against something that, you know, they have an issue with, it's like, yeah, no, you're not it. You're not it. And you have to, in those moments, you have to really kind of sort of put your foot down and say, look, you have to be really protective of your brand to the point to say, I can't just partner with anybody. I can't partner with somebody who's willing to step on somebody's toes in a moment where they don't need their toes stepped on, whether it's a fellow co-host or whether it's a guest. And for me, that was one of those moments. Again, if I felt like I thought about bringing him on as a co-host, that did it. I was like, nah, no, sir. Like, you have to be very vigilant in this process. You cannot just bring anybody on and think that it's going to make your show work.
You said it. You said process in this process, because in the process of answering or asking things, you also need to be able to respond thoughtfully.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
You got to be able to respond thoughtfully. You cannot just nasty is not, it just doesn't have a place unless that's your thing. We're not advertising those things.
Right, exactly.
We're just saying that they do not exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's not what we're fostering. That's not what we're teaching or wanting anyone to do. We want people to do things that's going to make the world better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Just
yeah.
make the world better. So it's amazing how from there you can move into the other thing we wanted to touch on. Can your co-host confidently shine in their role without overshadowing others? Because you've already gotten there. But even though this person was not your co-host, you want to make sure that the first part of what I said is not the most important part of that, but it's a vital part of that. You definitely want to make sure that your co-host has confidence.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You don't want to get someone who allows you to shine so much you don't know that they're there.
That part. It's a balance.
It's a balance. Speak to the balance, sir.
Absolutely, because the thing is, I mean, you alley-ooped, and I'm gonna slam dunk it because I have been in that situation too. Whereas, because the person didn't want to step on my toes too much because they felt like it was my thing, and I'm like, no, you're here. Like, if you like, I've brought you onto this, so it's okay for you to take the lead in certain situations or speak a little bit more. If the moment grabs you, let it grab you. Like, if something that somebody says compels you to ask a question, ask the question. Don't wait for me, because it's my questions. Like that's going to happen, you know, because that, I mean, this it's just, and it's not, I'm not saying this like in an arrogant or braggadocious way. This is how I'm wired, because if you say something that sparks a certain level of curiosity in me, I'm going to ask a question about it. I'm going to double click on that point, because that's the journalism. That's the journalist in me. That's just the curious George, so to say, in me. You know, like, I have to know a little bit more about that, because if you're on my platform, then I'm going to be interested. If you are here, I'm already interested in you. So if you're a part of this with me, I expect you to step into your greatness. I expect you to step into your role and recognize that you are a part of this as well. And I'm going to make room for you to shine. That's the key. You have to make room for people to shine and make it okay and make it comfortable for people to shine. But you also have to make sure, to your point, Marion, you have to make sure that that person wants to shine when the spotlight is on them. Because some people, they have no problem when the spotlight is on them. They go overboard. But then you have certain people who shrink from that spotlight. And you got to make sure that you got somebody who knows how to weave in and out of that spotlight. Like, okay, it's my turn. Okay, I've said enough. Now it's your turn.
Yeah.
It's knowing, again, it's that dance. It's that back and forth. And it's again, reading the room, recognizing the moment. What does the moment dictate to you? It's kind of like, Marion, I know you can attest to this as a singer and as a songwriter. Like when you're writing songs, like you don't, for me as a rapper, I don't tell the beat what to do. I let the beat tell me what to do. I don't come with a plug and play flow and the beat doesn't call for that flow. I listen to the music. I look for those parts where I can kind of sort of sway and make my words kind of flip off of those beats or those notes or whatever it might be, so that you can tell like I really studied that music, and it's like you feel like, oh, he is just floating over top of that beat. Same thing with you as a singer. You want to sing in a way where it's like you are an extra instrument in the midst of all of those instruments, and you fit seamlessly into that puzzle. It's the same thing with podcasting. It's the same thing with co-hosting. You have to know when your voice is necessary in that moment and when somebody else's voice is necessary in another moment.
Yeah. Wow. Priceless. And that actionable thing that you can do, test, you want to, while you're having that group conversation, like we were illustrating in the first one, that first actionable step, like really paying attention to people, listening to them, watching them, how they interact. You also want to hear, besides watching their ability to listen and respond, you also want to hear that they can uniquely articulate their insight.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If they can actually weave a story to draw in the listener. Yeah. Those things are very important. Mm-hmm. When this brother sat here and said at the top of the show, I want to tell you about when I was dating two ladies. He drew me in. That drew me in. That drew me in. I'm not going to say why again. I already said it. So if you missed that part, rewind it. You'll hear why I said it drew me in. I'm just saying.
Like, tell me more.
Drew me in. Because I'm like, oh, okay. She ain't going to have to do nothing. I got it. It drew me in. But you want someone who's able to tell a story. And then he gave a second and a third illustration to aid what we're speaking of. Mm-hmm. And in each one of them, he just gave music, how he raps and how he commingles with the music, but makes his own space where the music is already standing and finished. He makes his own lane in space that intertwines with the music, as do I. Yeah, but then he brought it right back to what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
How both co-hosts or the team of co-hosts come together and shine. Mm-hmm. Because that's very important. That's very important.
Absolutely.
Man, listen, I you know, have you ever been in a situation where you found that someone's not adaptable or is adaptable, whichever way you want to take the question, to succeed in multiple roles?
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna take it the positive way. And see, this is the perfect alley-oop for me to shout out one of my homies, one of my favorite people I've ever done a podcast with, my brother DJ Shane. I've done quite a few things with Shane. Yeah, that's my guy right there. That's my guy, my brother, you know. But I've sat in as a judge several times on a series that he ran for a while called Friday Night Fights. And then we did a series together called Turntable Thursdays. And so the beauty of Shane is that Shane could do a lot of kind of like the leg work, the grunt work to kind of sort of put it together and really present it. But a lot of times, even though he was like kind of like the orchestrator behind the scenes, a lot of times he was able to allow the other people on the show to shine, because his whole thing was, and always is, like, I don't want, I know it's a lot for you to take time out of your schedule to do certain things. And, I always honor your time. I always respect your time. So the less work that I can put on you and allow you to kind of be, shine and be in those moments where you're able to speak to certain subjects, like, I want to create that room for you. And that's really the type of person he is, period. And that's why, like, when it comes to really partnering him with anything, whether it's doing podcasts together, we got an album that we're putting together. We do a lot of things together because he gets me, I get him. I get the way that his mind works. He gets the way that my mind works. And there are different times where our strengths are being called to for certain moments. And then sometimes where it's like, okay, we kind of fall back and let the other one do a little bit more of that one particular thing that normally we would be really good at. But in that moment, they're shining. They're really in their groove. And it's like, you don't want to disturb that groove.
Yeah.
But it's an understanding. And sometimes the understanding is spoken and sometimes it's unspoken. But again, it calls for recognition. I always go back. I'm a football guy, so I always go back to play recognition. When you see what's developing right in front of your eyes, or you think they might be showing you something different, but you've studied the tape, so to say. You've seen that look. You've seen when that receiver lines up in that particular position, or that tight end goes in that particular position, or they got this number of offensive linemen in this particular formation. And it's like, as a defensive player, you see it and it's like, okay, I recognize what this is about to be. Let me not be too gung-ho. Let me do what the play calls for. Let me be adaptable in this situation. This might not be the situation where I'm supposed to blitz the quarterback or I'm supposed to blitz the play. Maybe I need to fall back a little bit and let the play come to me. It's the same thing with podcasting and being with somebody that you're partnering with. Like, you have to recognize the play.
Yeah.
And play according to what the play calls for you to, that functionality that you're supposed to have in that particular moment, on that particular play. Because you're not going to play the game the same way every single time. You're not going to come to a show and do the same exact thing that you did the last show, because that show might not call for you to do that. But you have to be with somebody who is okay, who is comfortable with saying, okay, on this show, I'm not going to do as much talking. Or on this show, maybe I'll help out a little bit more with, I don't know, being on the boards. Or maybe I'll do a little bit more promo this time around. Whatever it might be, whatever it might call for, it's just, can you be with somebody who is willing to adjust and adapt to different situations? Because just because you brought on and you think you the talent, so to say, it's certain things that's required of the talent to do, whether you know it or not. And so that's really the experience that, like, because again, as often as I try to bring positive experience, because I could go to the non-adaptable experience. I feel like I've kind of sort of alluded to that in the past. So I wanted to give one that was a little bit more where I worked with somebody who was more adaptable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for you, answering that same question, like, you could go somebody who wasn't as easily adaptable, somebody who was easily adaptable.
I love the example you gave because I feel like it's very important for a co-host to be flexible, and they need to be able to alternate between leading a discussion and supporting others seamlessly.
That's the
And
word right there.
that's everything you just said. Everything you just, that adaptability to ensure just a smooth collaboration, regardless of who had more talk time, who got to sit closer to the guest, who the guest looked at longer. There are things where just basic jealousy cannot come in to play. There are spaces where it's just not needed, not necessary, not called for. Actually, it minimizes the value of what's being done when it's done. You cannot. There is a level of humility that has to go with co-hosting with someone, because the topic at hand may call for, listen, I'm following your lead. I'm following your lead. I'm humble enough to say, I already know you know a lot more about this. I don't know that much, and I don't have a problem with asking questions and being vulnerable and making myself the example so that there are talking points where someone can actually hear someone's situation get resolved with whatever the person. Let's say we had a finance person here. I'll be the first one to go, I need help.
That would be me too.
I'll be today's test dummy. So I can actually get some valuable information for me, but in me getting valuable information, I'm helping my guest to put their wisdom, experience, expertise on display. I'm able to get some help. Anyone in and that's the thing, we always think we're the only ones in this situation, and we're not. So I'm able to get some help for someone else. Or even just allow someone to say, wait, I was able to follow that easily. I've heard other people talk about what they just investing and the way that they just said it and the way she asked answered the questions that were posed to her or him. It made it just easy. You want to make sure your co-host is setting the stage for other people to stand in the light, especially your guests. Especially your guests. You want to make sure that they're humble enough to be lovingly corrected, because there's a way to correct someone. There is a way to correct, like, wait, I didn't think we were going there. Sometimes the way you say something can bring stress, add stress, and just make it uncomfortable for everyone. And you can say that same thing. So it's like, it's not just the listening, and it's not just that dance and that yielding the floor. There's also that you need to be able to set it up for somebody else to make the shot.
That's right. I think of my man Magic. That's why Magic Johnson, one of my favorite players ever played the game. That man was always trying to set it up for somebody else to shine. Always like, hey, little no look pass. Hey, Kareem, you go ahead and take it. No look pass. Hey, James Worthy, you go ahead and take it. Like it was always that thing where it was like, yes, he was this great basketball player, but he was a great basketball player who really believed in a flow and just this rhythm when he was on the court. that just like had everybody eating, had everybody succeeding. And if he had to take the shot, he took the shot. But if the shot wasn't for him, he dished it off. He gave it to somebody else. That, again, recognition. And you said something in terms of like the whole lovingly correcting somebody. To me, that goes to delivery. How you deliver not only correction, but just information, period. When somebody doesn't know something, when somebody might be a little bit out of their depth and you might be a little bit deeper in it, or somebody else is a little bit more in that depth and you're not as deep in it. It's all in the delivery of how you try to get more information from that situation so everybody is able to eat, so everybody is able to get something from it, because it goes back to the community. The community is the ones who get the most from that synergy, from that synchronicity. And if you're dealing with somebody who doesn't know how to listen as much as they talk, that wants the spotlight and offer themselves and not able to share it not only with their co-host but with the guests, and then they don't know how to adapt in those situations, then it's gonna be a mess. But if you got that person who they know how to fall back when it's time for them to fall back, but step up when it's time for them to step up, that person that is cool with being in the spotlight but cool with stepping back from the spotlight to let somebody else shine. And then that person that just really knows how to just navigate through different roles. Like 1 minute they're playing this role, another minute they're playing that role. And every time they play that particular role, they don't seem just uncomfortable in that role because they understand the assignment. You got that person, then you got you a rock star of a co-host on your hands.
There you go. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Rock star of a co-host. All right. Listen, Joe, tell the people how they can reach us.
Yes. I said it like that, and all I wanted to say was bust the rhymes. I'm just being silly, y'all. So, if you want to reach us, we are on Instagram at IAmAPodcastPro. Also, we have a Facebook group, IAmAPodcastPro with Marion and Joe. And, of course, we're right here on YouTube. You're watching us. So if you're not already subscribed to us, please, what you doing? Subscribe to us right now, please. Like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And pass it on. If you felt like you got some valuable information out of this, whether you want a podcast or you know somebody else who wants to podcast or somebody who's currently podcasting, it doesn't have to be somebody that's just starting. It could be somebody who's doing it already, but just needs a little bit of help. Definitely pass along the information. And if you have any questions for us, please, you can hit us up on Instagram. You can hit us up on Facebook, but you can also email us at IAmAPodcastPro at gmail.com. Once again, that is IAmAPodcastPro at gmail.com. And of course, we keep saying pro. Before we even say that, we got to thank the people for coming out tonight. Because y'all could be anywhere in the world, but y'all decided to be here with us tonight to talk about this thing about finding that co-host that matches your shine. And then matching the shine.
Yeah.
You want to run down that pro one more time for him, Marion?
Bro, listen, purposeful. Be purposeful in the co-host that you choose to team up with and do your podcast. Be resilient in how you're going to do it so that both of you understand the mission, you're focused on the goal, and you get it done. And don't forget to be outstanding. Stand out and shine as the amazing co-hosts that you are. Listen, I wanted to also, you were saying, please, subscribe. The reason why we want you to subscribe is because we're trying to get this algorithm to push us out to as many people as possible. We're here to help. We started a free community. Please go to Facebook and join the free community. We are answering questions via email, also getting topics from people who have interests. And I want to add another layer to that. If you have a podcast, go in the chat, go in the comments, and put your podcast in there.
Mm-hmm.
Go down, put your podcast out there on this platform, right? Go ahead and put your information there so we can start to build this community to come together, to start to support each other and go and look at each other's podcasts.
Yes. Yes, that's a great idea. Great idea.
Pray that everything we share definitely blesses and helps you to grow into the amazing podcaster that you are. Everybody have a good one. See you in the next episode.
Peace.